All right, this video talks about absolute value functions. It's section 2.4 for college algebra. The graphing calculators do absolute value. The way to find that is you hit the math button, which I'll show you in a second, arrow over to the num column, and then choose number 1, which is abs, like this. So on your calculator, if you wanted to type the absolute value of negative 50, you would hit math, which is right here under alpha, arrow over to num, and then number 1 says abs. Some calculators will still say abs with a parentheses. Other ones will actually put those. Then you just type the number, and it'll hit enter. So you can use that for graphing. You can use that for anything. All right. Absolute value is defined as the distance away from 0. Really, it's just always positive. Takes whatever it is, makes it positive. And that's just because you can't do a reverse distance. Even if you go backwards, you're going a distance. So this red graph here is this equation. X minus 4 squared minus 3. And when you see this, it's saying the absolute value of the whole function. So you could plug values in. And really what it's doing is it's saying after you plug it in, take the absolute value. All that really means is make all y values positive. Those are from the calculator. So here, this whole piece is already positive. So we don't have to do anything there. This whole piece is positive. So we don't have to do anything there. This red piece underneath is negative. So let's pick a couple points. This is down 2, so I'm going to make it go up 2. This is down 3, so I'm going to make it positive 3. This is negative 2, so I'm going to make it positive 2. And essentially, it's just taking that negative piece, reflecting it over the x-axis, and that blue line right there is the graph of absolute value of f of x. Our domain has not changed. We haven't affected the x's at all. The range before was from negative 3 to 0 on the red. And now it's just, or negative 3 to infinity, sorry. And now it's just 0 to infinity because we can't have any negative numbers. Let's do this on the calculator so you can practice. So we're going to hit the y equals, which is right here. Clear out anything that's in there. And in y1, I'm going to type this. So parentheses, x minus 4, close parentheses, squared minus 3. And then in y2, I'm going to type this. So first I hit my math, go over to num, choose abs, and then type the same thing in there. X, parentheses, x minus 4, squared minus 3. So they're exactly the same other than the red one has absolute value. If I hit graph, you see the same thing. So their colors are backwards to my colors, but you see the difference in the graphs. Yours may draw them separately, the blue and then the red. It all depends on the settings on your calculator. That's how the graphs look. It's how it affects the points, how you put it in the calculator. Now we're going to solve. You solve them almost exactly the same as you would solve regular equations. The biggest difference is this value inside could be positive 7, because if you got the absolute value of 7, you'd get 7. But it could also be negative 7, because if you had the absolute value of negative 7, that would also spit out a positive. So your goal is to get your absolute value alone, and then you just set it equal to the answer, both positive and negative, and solve. And you're going to get 2 answers. So I would subtract 1 and get 2x equals 6. I would divide by 2, and one of our answers is 3. Let's check it. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Absolute value of 7 is 7. That works. Now let's solve this one. Subtract 1. We get 2x equals negative 8. Divide both sides by 2, and we get x equals negative 4. Well, 2 times negative 4 is negative 8, plus 1 is negative 7. And when you take the absolute value, you get positive 7. So both answers work. That's how you do it. You're going to get 2. Now, what's the difference between this one and this one? Well, the top one's an equation, the bottom one's an inequality. You start by solving it the same way. Wow, that doesn't say solve. Solve like an equation. So if we did that, because it's the same as above, we would get x equals 3 and x equals -4. Then we're going to test a point between those. We're going to see if that value makes it true. Because our answer is either going to be between 3 and -4, or it's going to be everything except what's between 3 and -4. And those numbers are backwards. But let's do that. So what's a number that's between 3 and -4? 0. It's the easiest one to test. So we're going to plug that in. Oops. Okay. And we're going to see if this is true. So 2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. And the absolute value of 1 is 1. Is 1 greater than 7? No. So since in between there is not true, our answer is going to be everything but in between there. So we take our two numbers, -4 and 3, and when it's not between, we write it like this: -infinity to -4 and 3 to infinity. This would be the solution, meaning everything inside doesn't count. All right, so let's look at these. Notice, they're all the same. 4 minus 3x is 2, 4 minus 3x is 2. So we're gonna solve the first one and then use our answers to do the rest. So here I would say 4 minus 3x equals 2, or 4 minus 3x equals -2. Subtract 4 from both sides. Divide by -3. So this one is x equals 2/3. You can leave it as a fraction. You can turn it into a decimal, whatever's easier for you. Then I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides of this one. Divide by -3. And I get 2. So those are my two answers, 2/3 and 2. So what's in between those? Well, 1. 1 is in between 2/3 and 2. So I'm going to test 1. So let's plug it in here. 4 minus 3 times 1. Well, 3 times 1 is 3. 4 minus 3 is 1. Absolute value of 1 is 1. Is 1 greater than 2? No. So like before, we do our smaller number and our bigger number, and then put -infinity and infinity so that we have two intervals. Now, if I did this one and tested 1, I would end up with the same answer, but now we're less than or equal to 2, which is true. So that means when we're in between the numbers, it's true. So same thing, we write the smaller and the larger, but this time we're just going to do one bracket. Now the only difference here is because there's an equals, these parentheses become brackets. If there was no equals line, they would stay parentheses. So you solve like an equation, test a number in between. If that test is not true, you write it as 2 separate intervals. If it is true, you write it as 1. Now let's look at a couple special things. Well, we have this one right here. What do you notice? Solve. Absolute value of 3x plus 5 equals -5. Well, any absolute value is going to make it positive. So there's no way to get a negative, so there's no solution. Similarly, it can't be less than a negative because absolute value is going to pick out positive, so it's no solution. Here, we're greater than -5. So that could be -4, -3, -2, any number greater than -5. Well, these are always going to be positive, so it's always going to be greater than -5. So you could say it's infinite solutions. You could say it's an identity problem, identity, or you could just say any number from negative infinity to infinity will make this true. Those are all things that you could get without having to do the math just by looking at the answer. Only works when the answer is negative. All right, well, what about this? This looks scary, but it's not. We're doing the same thing. We're gonna solve exactly as is, and then we're gonna solve by making the left side negative. Just like we were doing before, the only difference is it's a binomial instead of a number. Only change one side. Then we solve like normal. So here we would want to get the x's on one side, get the numbers on the other, and 9 is one of our answers. On this one, we would start by distributing, then get our x's on one side, get the numbers on the other, divide, and we have our two answers, 9 and -1. Inequality, same thing. So notice, just like before, these are the same. They're not always going to be the same, but this is how you'd solve and you'd get those two numbers. We're going to test something in between. So 0 is in between. So I would test 0, makes life easier. So let's see what happens. 0 plus 6 is 6. Absolute value of 6 is 6. 2 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 3 is -3, and the absolute value is -3. 6 is not less than 3, so we write our 2. Negative infinity to the smaller one, and the bigger one to infinity. Now, if we did the same thing in here and tested 0, we would get 6 is greater than or equal to 3, because it's going to be the same numbers. This is true. So we do our smaller number to our bigger number, and because of this line, we do brackets. That's all it is. It's no different than regular equations. You just have to test a point, and with the inequalities, you're going to get, or absolute value, you're going to get two answers. Now, let's look at how we could use the calculator. Well, we can enter one side of the equation in y1, and then enter the other side of the equation in y2. The solution would be where those two things intersect. So on our calculator, I'm going to type those in. So if I go to y1, clear out what's here. And type, so math over to num, absolute value, x plus 5. Arrow over to get out of the absolute value, hit plus, and then do another one. Math over to absolute value, x minus 3. So that's y1. y2 is 16. I'm going to hit graph. Well, I can't see where they intersect. So let's try changing our window. DOW. So I'm going to hit that window button. And I'm going to change my y max to 20 because 20 is greater than 16. And then hit graph and see what happens. Now I can see my intersections. Now I can guess, or the calculator will again do this for me. So I'm going to hit second, which is the blue button, trace, which is up here in the top row, and then I'm going to choose 5 and see where they intersect. So second, trace, 5. Your calculator says left bound. So you're going to move that little spider to the left of one of the intersections. Then you're going to hit enter. So move it to the right of one of the intersections. And then you're going to hit guess. Like, so you're going to put it as close to the intersection as you can. So enter, enter, and it's going to spit out the intersection. So one of them is -9, 16. Meaning one of our solutions is -9. Pause the video and try it on your own for the other side, and then we'll see how it goes. So second trace, intersect. I'm going to do the left of this one. Then I'm going to do the right, and I'm going to guess, I'm going to get x equals 7. So those would be the two numbers I got if I were to solve this. If you have multiple absolute values and a 16, this might be an easier way to do it, but that's completely up to you how you choose to solve. I've shown you algebraically, I've shown you graphically, I've shown you with the calculator. That is 2.4. Let me know if you have any questions.